Hi everybody, it's me again. Remember me, Mr. Seakens? It feels like a long time since I've done a video, but here's another one. We are looking at English, and this week we're moving on to a new topic. Alright, so we did poetry before, but now we're moving into adventure stories. Now, adventure stories, we need to think about what they are like. I mean, we did a sci-fi story last, and it was kind of similar in lots of ways. The idea of making it action-packed and exciting is the main idea. So first thing we're going to do is have a quick think about the main bits of an adventure story, the structure of an adventure story. In fact, the WALT today is to identify the structure of an adventure story. So, where does it start? An adventure story starts with its original setting. Now, adventure stories could be set in the present day, in the past, in the future. They could be set on this planet, they could be set on another planet. They could be set in a normal setting like a school or a home or a park, or they could be set in a bit more of an exciting place like a desert or a tropical rainforest or the Arctic tundra or a big sprawling futuristic city. Anything you like. This is up to you to decide, but the setting gives you a starting point. Now, in that setting live the characters. So one of the first things you do when you're writing an adventure story is you introduce the characters. Are they children like you? Are they animals? Are they aliens? Are they figures from history? They can be literally anything you like. They can be anything you imagine. So, for example, I might want to imagine a giant half wolf who's like got loads of muscles, wears a bandana, is great with a laser blaster. Or I might want to imagine, I don't know, a kid who's 4, but he's very adventurous and very courageous, and maybe the adventure could be around about him instead. You see, anything you like. Characters can be anything you want. And of course, some characters in an adventure story are going to be good guys, and others are going to be bad guys. Alright, enough about characters. The first thing that happens in an adventure story is an event happens to start the adventure. Now, lots of things could happen here to trigger an adventure. It could be somebody's kidnapped, a bit like in the space story. It could be a letter comes through the post. It could be something is discovered they've lost something. It could be some kind of ghost appears and talks to them, like in Star Wars. Obi-Wan Kenobi could come and say something. Now, there's loads of things that could trigger an adventure. Basically, the adventure needs to be something like either getting something that's lost, or defeating somebody that needs defeating. Achieving a mission or a quest is kind of the idea. So, after the event happens to trigger the adventure, suddenly the characters have to travel to a new setting. So if they were sat in school, they might go to somewhere new and exciting. It could be a new part of school, it could be a new place in the area, it could be somewhere totally different. You could have all kinds of things. They could take a plane, they could take a speedboat, they could walk, they could run, they could get carried by eagles, they could ride on the back of lions. Anything you like can happen in your adventure story, as long as it's action-packed and exciting. And they get to a new setting. Now, remember, when you introduce a new setting, of course you've got to describe it. Make it come alive for the reader. That's so important. And then, the next bit you need in your adventure story is some kind of danger, some kind of obstacle that the characters have to overcome to achieve their mission and to complete their quest. So now these kind of things can vary a lot. It could be a deadly robot. It could be a lion with the head of a snake and the body of a scorpion. Or you could have it could be like a physical danger, it could be like a geographical danger, like a waterfall they have to cross somehow, or a storm if they're floating in a ship. It could be a storm they have to survive, or there's literally anything. It could be a swarm of wasps, but deadly robot wasps, with laser stings, and they're laser guided. I mean, whatever you like. I'm rambling a bit here, but you get what I'm saying. Now, this is where things get a bit greater depth. The next thing you can add in is a change in the characters. Now, what this is called is character development. Now, if you've got a character someone, for example, let's take Harry Potter, whose books I'm reading at the second. He starts off as a young kid. He doesn't really know much about things, but even by the end of the first book, he's gone from being a bit clueless to being quite brave and bold, and he defeats Voldemort in the first book. So you see, the character has changed. Another word for that is he's developed, and so including that is quite a challenge. So has something that happened in the story made your character braver or more scared of something, or are they angry now after something's happened? There's lots of different emotions you can describe with your characters. On we go. Once we've got through the dangers, we come to the point where you achieve the mission, you get what you needed to get, or do you? Obviously that's up to you as well. So you've got what's called the climax. That means the peak of the mountain. Everything up until this point was the beginning, and this is the peak. This is the main thing. Do you rescue the person who was kidnapped? Do you defeat the big boss man who threatened to, I don't know, melt the ice caps, or drill a hole into the centre of the earth and blow it up, or whatever it was you imagined in the first place? And the final part is the return home. How's the character changed? What has changed now that he's been defeated? How can you round off your story in a satisfying way that doesn't just go, and it was all a dream, the end? Because that's a bit basic. And of course we don't want to go, and they all lived happily ever after, because that's hyper cliche. We're going to try and avoid that. Right, your task today for this lesson is to read the story that I wrote earlier today, sitting in the sun, watching my laptop overheat, and you're going to need to reverse it. You're going to take my story and you're going to make a plan out of my story. Because usually we write a plan first and then we write the story, but this time I've written the story and I want you to turn it into a plan. So your plan is going to be filled with all kinds of things that you've taken from my story, and you're going to put it into those steps that I just described. Settings, character, an event that triggers the adventure, new setting, and then a danger or an obstacle, and then the characters change, and then the climax, they get what they wanted in the first place, and then the return home. I'm going to read you my story. You can read it yourselves, of course, because it's going to be sent through to you via the email, but I'm going to give it a quick read. This is called A Shaftesbury Park Adventure, The Quest for the Missing Lunchbox. Here we go. The seconds before lunchtime ticked by slowly. The children of Wales class were in the warm and drowsy classroom, wearily finishing their maths exercises, something about converting units of something, and trying to ignore the persistent rumbling of their stomachs. The moments before lunch always felt like an eternity. "Time's up, children," chirped Mr. Seakens, their beloved teacher. "Tidy your tables, wash your hands, and make a line next to the door. And don't forget your lunch boxes." In a few moments the class stood expectantly, food in hand, waiting to head down to the dinner hall. Two children, however, hadn't joined the line. They turned to their teacher, looking rather shocked. "My lunchbox is missing," cried Kenzie. "Mine too," added Clara. "Are you sure it's not under the chair?" suggested Arthur. The children hurriedly searched everywhere, but their food was nowhere to be found. "Wait a minute. What's this?" Clara was holding a ragged piece of paper in her hands, which was covered in very messy writing. She began to read it aloud. "Dear Clara and Kenzie, we have stolen your lunch, and you will never see it again. We can't wait to eat your favourite sandwiches. Best wishes, the villainous pigeons." At this, Clara and Kenzie were mystified. Why had they been chosen over the others? Was it because of their excellent effort during lockdown? They knew they had to act fast, or they'd have to suffer a fate worse than death. Eating school dinners instead. Without hesitation, they flew down the stairs and into the playground, where they were certain their lunches were being held. When they opened the doors to the playground, they found it eerily deserted. The usual hooting of happy children had been replaced with a ghostly silence, disturbed only by the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. Overhead, there came the sound of fluttering wings, only larger, deeper, more menacing. Looking up, they saw the shadow of a huge bird, the size of a small car, circling down to land before them on the smooth grey tarmac of the playground. 2 more smaller pigeons landed to either side of the larger bird, menacing expressions on their faces. Kenzie could see that the largest pigeon held their lunchboxes under his wing. He looked down on the children with a smirk of contempt. "So I suppose you're here to get your food back," boomed the largest pigeon. "Yeah," said Kenzie, shaking his fist. "Give it back right now." Furious, Clara gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. Something told her she'd better be ready for a fight. In the flap of a muscular wing, the pigeons lunged forwards, flapping aggressively and striking out with their pointy beaks. The pair scattered, both chased by the smaller pigeons, as the larger one looked on approvingly. "Kenzie, I'll distract them. You get to the PE cupboard." "The PE cupboard!" shouted Clara, crouching down behind a picnic bench. "Oh, pigeons, I'm over here." Both pigeons strutted angrily towards the sound of her voice as Kenzie dashed into the PE cupboard. He emerged seconds later with an arsenal of weaponry, frisbees, dodgeballs, and several foam javelins. "Get away from her, you mangy sky rats," warned Kenzie, launching a dodgeball with all his might at Clara's pursuers. The ball collided with the first pigeon, sending him hurtling into the other, and they rolled across the playground dazed before flapping away, cooing woozily. "Ah, bravo, children," burbled the largest pigeon. "You have survived the first test, but now feel the awesome power of my giant wings." He tossed the lunchboxes behind him and advanced towards the children. They could see the burning hatred in his tiny eyes. "Kenzie, pass me those javelins," called Clara, still taking cover behind the picnic bench. She gathered the makeshift missiles in her arms, and launched them at their mighty adversary. "In your face, Mr. Pigeon," she cried, and struck him twice between the eyes. The huge beast wobbled, clearly dazed by the impact, but continued towards them. Kenzie armed himself with as many dodgeballs as he could manage and hurled them at the pigeon. The first 2 were brushed away with a sweep of the beast's giant wings, but the others hit him, and it was clear that he was weakening. "This is for stealing my baby Belle," growled Clara, and she charged at the pigeon, before executing a perfect backflip, ending in a flying kick to the pigeon's feathery chest that sent him flying. He slammed into the wall behind him and was knocked out cold. Wasting no time, the children gathered their lunchboxes and ran to the dinner hall. Taking their seats amongst their friends, who were all tucking into their food, they had a number of questions to answer. "Where were you? Did you find your lunchboxes? Where were they?" Kenzie and Clara exchanged a knowing glance. "Oh, they were just in the playground." The end? Question mark? That was an adventure story that I wrote. I literally just pulled all the ideas out the top of my head. The basic premise is 2 children have their lunchboxes stolen by pigeons, have to fight the pigeons to get it back. Get it back. Done. It's kind of simple when you think of it that way. But what I tried to do was describe the action really, really clearly. Your job now, boys and girls, is to go back through my story that I've written, and I want you to turn it back into the plan it might have come from. Alright, so you've got to think about what was the original setting, what was the unexpected event that happened, what's the new setting that they go to, what's the danger they have to get past, does anyone change in any way, or does anyone show anything different than what they might have been before, what's the climax, what's the final point where they actually get what they wanted to get, and what happens when the main characters return home. As a bonus, I want you to include anything that I have used that talks about the senses. Anything I've written, that talks about the senses. So have I mentioned things you can see, things you can hear, things you can smell, things you can touch, like the feel of things, or was there taste as well? Obviously taste doesn't really come into all that much. Okay, That is your job. I want to email back to me by the end of the day. Do you hear me, Jacob and John? By the end of the day. Thanks, people. I'll be back very soon with lesson 2. Enjoy.